Hi there, Ridgely Goldsberg here from Shymanski, and I'm joined today by John Rittichier, Vice President in our Tax Department, and Brant Kennedy, Vice President in our Accounting and Auditing Department. Together, these gentlemen lead the Shymanski Manufacturing Industry Team, and we're going to talk to them about some important issues. First, starting with unlocking the potential of the Indiana Manufacturing Readiness Grant. So over to you, John. What is the Manufacturing Readiness Grant, and how much is available for businesses?
Sure. Thanks, Ridgely. So the Indiana Manufacturing Readiness Grant is a matching grant available to manufacturers that make capital investments for smart manufacturing technologies in Indiana to boost profitability, be more competitive, leverage innovative digital technology, and increase productivity. So this program is provided by the Indiana Economic Development Corporation and is administered by Connexus Indiana and the Next Level Manufacturing Institute. So this program has been a huge success with over $52 million in grant funding already awarded. This program has been extended with additional funding included in the 23-24 state budget at $20 million per year. So these grants can be any size up to a maximum of $200,000. They must be matched by the applicant on a minimum 1-to-1 ratio basis. So a project with a budget of at least $400,000 would be needed to secure the maximum $200,000 grant award.
And what are the eligibility criteria for manufacturing companies to apply for and receive a manufacturing readiness grant?
Sure. An applicant must be a manufacturer planning to make a capital investment in the form of smart manufacturing or advanced manufacturing technologies within their Indiana-based operation. While there's no size limitation for the size of the applicant, small and medium-sized manufacturers with less than 500 employees are heavily favored in this program. These projects must directly affect manufacturing processes and focus on investments in commercial-ready equipment technologies. We're really talking about things that are ready in the industry, not R&D type investments. So the application requests specific information on how your capital project will credibly leverage smart manufacturing technology to improve production capacity, capability, speed, or quality. So smart manufacturing further integrates digital technologies like Internet of Things, cloud computing and analytics, and artificial intelligence and machine learning into company-wide operations and manufacturing processes. Outcomes of smart manufacturing are often increased production and flexibility or agility, real-time visibility into equipment performance, and responsiveness to customer demand. Smart manufacturing also leverages data to a high degree with technologies like advanced sensors, Internet of Things technology and connectivity, embedded software, and so on for outcomes like predictive maintenance, self-optimization of process improvements, and increased production efficiencies. So other advanced investments will be considered if they are innovative and transformative beyond the status quo to a degree appropriate for the applicant and proportional to the ask. So there is some flexibility in what qualifies for these grants. It's really all in how the project is presented.
Now, can you provide examples of successful projects or initiatives that have been funded through the Readiness Grant program, and how have they impacted the competitiveness of manufacturing businesses?
Sure. So the Connexus Indiana website provides a few informative case studies to help manufacturers envision the projects that could be implemented into their production process. And we'll have a link to that website here in the video. So there's some great examples of companies around Indiana that have qualified and submitted their applications and implemented these new technologies into their process.
Tell us, what steps should a manufacturing company take to prepare a compelling proposal when applying for a readiness grant, and what key performance indicators, KPIs, are typically used to measure the success of grant-funded projects in the industry itself?
So there's a formal application that must be submitted to get the process started. So this application is much like a business plan with questions regarding the type of technology that's going to be implemented, the associated costs, workforce implications for training, safety, and wage impacts, and the anticipated timeline for the project. The website has a sample application that has prompts on how to properly complete each section of the application. So it's a very powerful tool there, that template that can help you with your application process.
John, thank you very much. Over to you, Brant. So let's talk for a little bit about inventory management, and how have you seen manufacturing and wholesale distribution companies manage their inventory through COVID-19 and these past couple of tough years?
Yeah, it's certainly been interesting and challenging, and that's probably an understatement, Ridgely. Before COVID-19, manufacturers were following EOQ, economic order quantities, just-in-time inventory. If they needed something, they'd call their supplier and they could get it within a couple days. And COVID kind of shifted that and flipped everything on its head. Supply chain issues, delays in shipping, problems once the product was shipped, and then ultimately getting our product to our customer as a manufacturer was really a challenge. And really, I think companies just did what they had to do. And a lot of that was, figuring out what suppliers did they need to use. Could they find more local suppliers that expedited that process and the ability to get inventory and raw materials? Could they build up surplus inventory, right, and have plenty on hand for the coming months and years potentially, so that they can meet their customer demand as it returns, as COVID and the economy started to open back up. So there was a lot of different things that were happening. We did see a lot of clients move manufacturing back onshore to the United States. And certainly they're in the process now of reconsidering that and wondering if that's kind of here to stay, or do they, look back to China and other foreign countries to continue their manufacturing and their supplier relationships.
And tell us, what should companies be on the lookout for when it comes to inventory management as the cost of inventory starts to stabilize and maybe in some cases even decline?
Yeah, well, we hope we're getting to a point of inventory stabilization and raw material stabilization. We have had a few clients, manufacturers and distributors, who have seen some pretty significant cost declines. And obviously the challenge there is now we have surplus inventories where our costs maybe aren't quite reflective. And again, we'll get to that piece in a minute. But it's very important to kind of revisit. We've I think made it through kind of the most challenging time of COVID and things like that. And of course, there's some out there who are still fighting it, but we've made it through a lot of it. And so now there's a great time to reevaluate those suppliers, make sure that we have suppliers who, heaven forbid, we have another COVID-19 or another major supply chain disruption, really evaluating whether we should be going back to our overseas suppliers, or do we have local suppliers that we can use? Are those local suppliers bringing quality products? What are they dealing with in terms of their labor force and their quality issues and their raw material issues? And really trying to understand those things. I think we're back onto a little bit more of an even playing field where we can really be a little more selective in the type of products we're buying and the suppliers that we're working with. I think another thing that, if anything good came from COVID-19, every industry, every company really moved quickly into digital transformation. We were forced to, right? Manufacturers were forced to figure out new ways, and technology is one of those ways. So looking at, blockchain and ERP systems that we've had around for 30 years aren't going to cut it anymore. So what kind of new ERP systems, technologies do we need to be looking at? Do we need to be investing in? And really, what are going to help us over the next, 5, 10, 15 years as we navigate this new kind of digital environment?
So let me ask you, what strategies can manufacturers implement to address the challenges of excess or obsolete inventory? And how can these strategies help improve overall profitability and sustainability?
Right. And we really hope we don't have to deal with that. But the nature of the environment and the economy right now is that we are seeing inventory levels grow, and we've seen them grow steadily because of that risk, that supply chain risk, and that those issues that we've seen in the last few years. So really, companies are going to have to get creative. right? They're going to have to look for maybe alternative or new customers in order to move that surplus inventory, or maybe inventory that's obsolete for your existing customer base may have an alternative use in a different industry or to a different customer. So really exploring those other customer options that maybe you haven't thought about before. Also determining if certain manufactured products that you have, sitting in your finished goods warehouse could be parted down and reused for other purposes. If raw material purchasing and obtaining those are still a challenge, maybe parting down existing inventory that you have and using those parts to build a product that is moving that you can sell is something to consider. And then providing those discounts and incentives for customers, maybe just to move the inventory, but also maybe you can do it in a way that incentivizes future sales and future customer involvement there. So I think those are the three main things that companies need to look at. The last thing, and we don't ever like to talk about this, certainly in the audit world, it's a challenging conversation, but having to consider a reserve or writing down that inventory to a net realizable value so that your cost truly represents what you can recover when you are able to sell that inventory or scrap it.
Yeah, that's tough for sure. All right, back to you, John. Let's delve into Section 174 research expenditures and the tax implications there. Can you explain the current status of Section 174 research expenditures and some of the history leading up to our current situation?
Sure, Ridgely. This story really starts back in 2017 with the passing of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So this act lowered corporate and individual income tax rates and enacted the 20% qualified business income deduction for flow-through businesses and extended the expanded bonus depreciation, among other things. So in order for the act to pass through Congress with a simple majority, it had to be passed via a budget reconciliation process, which required the bill to be revenue neutral over a 10-year period. So to pay for these cuts in taxes, revenue raisers had to be included in the bill. And these revenue raisers were generally backloaded into the second half of that 10-year window we just talked about. So here's where the Section 174 expenditures come into play. So for tax years beginning in 2022, specified research and development expenses must be capitalized and amortized over a 5-year period, or 15 years if those expenditures were conducted outside of the United States. So this has resulted in a very significant increase in taxable income for many taxpayers due to these current period costs not being currently deductible, but rather capitalized and amortized over a 5-year period. So both parties in Congress have recognized that this is really not supportive of innovation, manufacturing, or the economy as a whole. But regardless of this bipartisan support, the current divided Congress has really lacked a clear path to modify these required capitalization rules.
Yeah, makes sense. So what types of research and development activities in the manufacturing sector typically qualify as Section 174 expenditures?
Sure. So in a nutshell, these expenditures include your labor costs, materials and supplies, depreciation on equipment, the cost to obtain a patent, travel costs, and overhead costs associated with the development or improvement of a product, a component of a product, or a subcomponent of a product. So many of these costs do overlap with the costs associated with claiming the federal research credit, but technically you may still have these Section 174 costs that must be capitalized in your operation, even if you are not claiming the research credit.
So are there any recent regulatory changes or updates related to Section 174 that manufacturing businesses should be aware of, and how can they ensure compliance with all tax laws?
Sure. So the IRS has recently issued Notice 2023-63, which provides some specific guidance on what activities fall under this Section 174 regime and therefore require capitalization. But I think really the bigger picture is whether a bill can be passed to allow for current expensing. So there is a bill introduced in the House, the Build in America Act, to make this change, actually retroactive back to 2022, but there's unfortunately been little movement thus far on this bill. So I'd really recommend that we reach out to our lawmakers and advocate for this bill to be passed to really jumpstart the manufacturing industry, get us back to where we need to be as far as being leaders in innovation and production in the world.
Indeed, indeed. Gentlemen, thank you very much, John and Brant, for your insights into these important factors in the manufacturing industry. Very much needed, and we much appreciate it. Thank you both.